good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or whenever you may be tuning into the Growing Our Future podcast. Hey, we just appreciate you stopping by. Time's one of those things we can't save it, we can't hoard it. The only thing we can do with time is spend it. And so the fact that you're stopping by and sharing some of your time with us, let me tell you, it's an honor. We appreciate you being here. The podcast itself, Growing Our Future, I tell people if agriculture's taught me anything, it's taught me this. If you want to know what the future is, grow it. Well, how do you grow a future? You got to plant the right seeds. You got to take care of those seeds. And then you got to harvest it and then share it with other people. That's what this podcast is about. We bring on people that I consider subject matter experts, people with incredible stories, testimonies, and seeds of greatness. Things that if we listen, we can find something that we can plant in our lives. Today is no different. I have been looking forward to this interview. I remember reaching out to this young man's mom. She said, well, he's got to do these other podcasts first. I said, okay, let him do them. As soon as he gets them done, I want a shot at him. And we got him. Today, we've got Colton Kyle with us. Colton Kyle, president of the AmericanSniper.com. Colton, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to this. I am by no means an expert on anything, but I do my best.
Yes, you are. You got a testimony, and we're going to talk about that testimony. That's what you're an expert on. So I always think that that's really kind of fun. Sometimes I ask the kids that in the FFA, I said, tell me about your business. And they always look at me and they say, well, Mr. Alejandro, I don't have a business. I said, yeah, you are. You're it. I said, what time do you go to work in the morning? What kind of customer service do you deliver? I said, you are your business. And just like you, Colton, I've been following your brand. And I'm telling you that is extraordinary to have a business. It's extraordinary to live a brand. And that's the reason why I wanted you on this show. We're going to talk about that. We start every episode off the same way, though. So I would like to start this episode off with a simple question. And that is, Colton, what are you grateful for today?
Today, I could think of 1,000,001 things to be grateful for. Specifically, this morning, I was able to work out with my girlfriend. And so I'm very grateful for an able body that I've been blessed with, that I can go to the gym and work hard and reap those rewards through the rest of my non-training activities.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Ability to get out, get a little blood flow with people you enjoy hanging around.
Yeah. What? There are a lot of people who don't have that opportunity.
Well, and with people that you enjoy hanging out with.
Agreed. Good company.
I was going to say, that what a better deal than that?
Not many. Yeah, I'm with you.
I'm like you. I like, I don't know about you. I love the great outdoors.
Yep.
I love, like you said, to kind of get the blood flowing and good company. And live in a country and under an umbrella that allows me all those incredible freedoms and liberties and opportunities. And I just can't be thankful enough that this is where God allowed me to be born and to raise my family here. And so I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Colton, we talked a little bit, before and after. We'll talk some more, but everybody's got a testimony. Everybody's got a story. And sometimes we kind of find our paths through those testimonies, and we find our paths through those stories. And, there will be people that might tune into this podcast, which may not have a background. They may not have a full understanding of who you are, maybe your lineage, your background. So if you could, Colton, just kind of take us through a little bit and tell us a little bit about Colton Kyle. Where did you grow up? How did you grow up? And how have you found yourself into this position that you're in today with American Sniper?
Yes, well, I'm Texan, so I'm going to claim to be Texan. Technically, I was born in California, but the first soil that my feet touched was Texas soil. My dad made sure it was brought to the hospital because he's proud Texan. And so I consider myself to be a proud Texan as well. So I'm still in Texas now, and I probably will be for a little while at the very least. I am 20 years old. I graduated high school 2 years ago. And since then, I've been working on the American Sniper brand. So I run the brand. My mom has given me the opportunity to do that. And as much as American Sniper, who is my father, Chris Kyle, has been a figure and a book and a movie, my mom has done enough with it so that it could stay a brand that way in case my sister or I wanted to take on that role as part of our inheritance, we were able to. And so I had this great opportunity to do that. And that's what I've been doing these past 2 years. So, as you mentioned, my website, americansniper.com. Right now, I have merchandise on there. I've got some more things coming soon, specifically merchandise, expanding on that. But also, in the next year or two, I expect to have some tactical gear available, and maybe move into some firearms and some things like that. I'm passionate about that. So, I'm excited about that. That's what I do now. On the side as well, I'm really passionate. I'd say my main passion is apologetics. And if you're not familiar with that, that is the reasonable or logical defense of your faith. So explaining to people who may have different worldviews, different backgrounds, or maybe even Christians, and expanding on what my faith is and why logically I believe that. And it's integral to your faith is the faith part of that and believing in things that you don't see. There's also a large part of reason and logic. And most likely, why does it make the most sense that Christianity is the truth? Because everything takes faith, everything takes some belief. You have to make assumptions at some point to believe anything at all. So I just believe that my faith takes the least amount of faith or belief in trusting things that you don't see. And I think atheism and other religions take a lot more faith than mine does. So I know that can be kind of confusing, but
No,
that's my passion. That's what I like to do. So I like to read and have Bible study and listen to many great speakers and authors and that kind of thing. So that's a little insight into Colton Kyle.
I love it. By the way, that this right here is exactly why we do this podcast, by the way, Colton. So, the one thing that I tell people that you cannot argue with, and that is somebody's testimony. No, nobody could ever come along and say, Colton, that didn't happen to you. That
Yep.
that would be a foolish statement. The beauty of a testimony is it's built around all of those things, those experiences, those values. But something that you said, and this is the reason why I share this, this is what I want people to kind of take away from these podcasts is learn to listen to what the speakers say, the guests say, what they share. And one of the things that you've just shared that I really hope people are listening to is discernment. You have a real mature sense of discernment. And I think that is an incredible attribute. And I hope that young people will ask questions. It's okay to ask questions because I think it's in that asking questions that you find answers where you become a better discerner. Is
I
that
agree.
fair to say that?
I totally agree. Yeah, I think questions and doubt is understandable. Everybody has doubt at different points about different things, but earnestly and honestly seeking answers, I think you'll find the truth. Jesus says, "If you seek, you'll find the truth, and the truth is Him." So I'm all about asking questions and asking the hard questions, because if somebody doesn't know, that they should say, "I don't know," and I'll help you look. But and there will be things that go unanswered, but there will be a lot of things that have good answers that in the very end you can find comfort in.
So one of my favorite verses in the Bible, I was speaking to a bunch of kids down in the Houston area the other day, and they asked me some pretty interesting questions, by the way. Kind of surprised.
Yeah.
They asked me about how important is faith to leadership.
Hmm.
I really appreciated that question. And then they asked me, they said, "Do you have a favorite Bible verse?" And I said, "Interesting that you would say that." I said, "I sure do." I said, "I got lots of them, but I got one in particular. And it really kind of goes to what you just said. It's James 1:5. It says, "If any man seeks wisdom, let him ask God who gives it freely to all men without casting judgment." So that means anybody, if you need wisdom, you just got to ask.
Yeah.
And there's a opportunity there to gain insight. But discernment, I think, is really important for today's young people because I think in today's world of media, social
Hmm.
media, entertainment, there are so many different touch points that can try to sway a value system, sway an opinion.
Mhm.
that I think having that element, that leadership tool, I'm going to call it a leadership tool, that leadership tool of discernment, I think can keep your compass in the right direction.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we used to be in the age of information, and now we're in the age of misinformation.
Mm,
So
mm,
many things out there, and so many. It's so easy to deceive people, kind of with the rise of AI and just with presenting things that aren't facts as if they are facts. And in our short form content, how we don't fact check hardly anything or spend time researching anything. We just trust who claims to be an expert without even finding out if they are an expert. So discernment is, yeah, it's incredibly important and powerful. I really like when you mentioned James 5, part of the end part of the verse is he gives it freely without casting judgment. So it doesn't matter who you are, what your background is. If you're supposedly the most holy Christian, if you're somebody who's been in the church for a long time and has done all the right things, or if you're somebody who's never been in the church
right.
and doesn't even know who God is or what he's supposed to be like, when you start asking questions and you're honestly seeking answers, God's going to give it to you, and he's not going to look down upon you because you should know these things because you've been in the church, or you should know these things because you've heard it, or anything like that. Um, it really speaks to his character that he gives that freely and his knowledge about himself.
Mm. I had a friend here. I live in North Texas. I live in Wichita Falls. And I was 23 years old. I just moved to this community. By the way, Colton, get this. I'm 23 years old. I'm the district director for a member of Congress. I got 4 offices. I've got an office in Denton, Wichita Falls, Lubbock, and Amarillo. I'm the gatekeeper, and I hardly know anybody. That'd be like being 23 and being the gatekeeper for Marcus's brother. It's like it's crazy to think that that's what I did. But when we think about discernment and knowledge and wisdom and just making yourself accessible, there's also another trait in here, leadership trait, and this one's tough for people. It's vulnerability, because I've got to be a little bit vulnerable to be potentially a little bit wrong.
Yeah, that's true.
Does that make sense? I've got to be a little bit vulnerable. you know the other side of that is, I tell kids all the time, be open-minded, but just don't be so open-minded your brain falls out. So, I mean, I want you to be open-minded, but I want that discernment, and I want that humbleness of vulnerability to say, maybe I don't have all the answers. Maybe I need to seek wisdom. Maybe I need to, another thing that I share, Colton, which is another reason why I wanted you on the show. A wise mentor of mine once time told me, he said, Aaron, he goes, always have 10 friends older than you and 10 friends younger than you. The ones that are older than you are going to tell you where we've been. The ones younger than you are going to tell you where we're going. And I've never forgot that. And so when I moved to Wichita, 23 years old, there was a doctor here that befriended me and I befriended him. And he was a man of faith. We did a lot of work with Fellowship of Christian Athletes. It's just a good man. Mm-hmm. And we used to go over to his house every week, and other men would come and we'd sing and do Bible studies and stuff. And he got cancer and he passed away. And I remember we came over to his house after that, and we were all sitting there, and everybody said, we just got to have faith. And I was mad. I'm sorry. I'm human. I was mad. And I said, it's not right. I said, Jerry's one of the finest men that I've ever known in my life. He's one of the most incredible men of character that I've ever known in my life. It's not right. So I was mad. I got up and walked out, by the way. And thankfully, my brothers still loved me. They knew I was just mad. But I happened onto a book, and the book was called, by John Fisher, it was called True Believers Don't Ask Why. And the don't is crossed out.
Okay, good.
So I remember it must have been a God thing that I just happened to walk by that book, and I grabbed that book, and that's what the book is about, is asking questions.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of stuff with teachers where we train teachers, and they get on the bus and I give them a work manual. And the first thing in their work manual is the word question. And then below it, it says, what is the root word of the word question?
Quest.
Go on an adventure. So to hear you at 20 years old talking about going on an adventure of learning, of discerning, and then being bold enough to share, I think there are some real intriguing leadership tips there for young people
Yeah.
because they could duplicate what you're doing. They might duplicate it in an engineering space. They could duplicate that in a medical space, in a law space. I mean, I can think of several things. In other words, I think God gives us concepts that are scalable.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's good stuff, what you shared.
Yeah, and then I have a few things on leadership, important leadership
Sure.
qualities.
Bring them.
Uh, I'd say the first one is communication. So to speak to your vulnerability, you do have to be vulnerable, but to be able to express that effectively and communicate effectively, if you want to lead somebody, you have to let them know where you want them to go or what you want them to do or how you want them to do it. And if they don't know any of those things, then you really can't be a leader. So I think communication and effective communication is um, incredibly important. And I think you know that when you run into a leader that's an effective communicator, that you really understand what they're saying or how they're feeling, or what they want you to do, then you're able to do it so much better. Um, and then on top of that, so communication is I think the first thing. And then once people can understand what you're trying to tell them, then that goes into how you communicate and how you're treating others. Strategical thinking is obviously incredibly important to manage multiple people. But then faith and part of that being compassion and love and patience for people, because like you said, I'm human, we're human, and when you lead people, you're not leading robots. And it's easy to say, it's kind of cliche, but
Mm.
uh, really you have to understand that people are human and they're going to make mistakes, and they're also going to do things better than you would do them, and you have to be okay with that and harness that power of people's strengths and understand their weaknesses and be able to play into that. But having patience with any people that you're over as a leader is incredibly important, because when people know that you care for them, they want to do better work for you, and they
Right.
want to, yeah, they want to run head first with you as you're leading the charge.
Keep going. You're doing good. What else do you got for me? Give me some more leadership tips. That's great stuff.
Well, I mean, I just think that's the base. And then it's kind of, like you said, it's a quest, and you kind of find your own answers as you ask your own questions. And I could probably talk forever about anything if you wanted me to, just kind of inherited that. But um, yeah, I mean, I think it's effective communication and strategical thinking, which not everyone is blessed with in the way that they can manage people. But I do think that's important. And then what anybody can learn is how to treat others. And when you show people love, they understand and they respect that. And if that's missing a deadline or something that may seem detrimental, and you say, well, I want to discourage that. I don't want people to not follow through or to make mistakes. But um, the man who's the most grateful is the man who's been forgiven the most, right? And so the person who's going to work the hardest for you is going to be the person who you've forgiven the most, that owes you the most. And so at a certain point, as an employer specifically, there's a place to draw the line for people who are um, repeat offenders of something, and they're not learning and they're not growing. But someone who is, I have a kind of a mentor who told me they got to be smart, humble, and hungry. And anybody who works for you needs to have those three traits. Smart, if you can read, you're probably smart enough to do any job, because most things can be taught. And if you're humble and you can respect authority and respect orders, then you can work hard. And then hungry means they have to want it for themselves. And you can kind of stoke hunger and stoke that fire. Um, but someone who's lazy and chooses not to be hungry, you just, at some point, there has to be a line drawn. That doesn't mean you give up on them as a person, but maybe as an employee. So that's some of my thoughts on leadership, I suppose.
Okay, we can stop there. That's good. No, that's I really related to a lot of that, by the way. So, um, my mom and dad, I grew up there in the Metroplex, and my mom and dad divorced when I was 6. My father passed away when I was 10, and I got into a lot of trouble and I got sent to a boys' ranch. And if I'd got sent there, I'd have never met the FFA. If I'd have never met the FFA, I'd have never been state president. I would have never gone to college. I'd have never had the incredible life. We'd have never had this podcast. But to your point, I'm very grateful. I'm grateful for the love of my mother that realized she didn't have the tools. She needed help. I'm grateful for a place that gave me opportunity and an organization that gave me opportunity. And to your point, I think that being grateful provides some energy to get through tough times.
Absolutely, it does.
You know, it allows us to reflect and say, yeah, it's not good. I had a girl on this podcast. Her name was Madeline Barber, and she was from Bernie, Texas. And she sold a pig at the county fair. She sold this pig at the county fair for $35,000. That's a lot of money, Colton.
Yeah, that is.
And she turned around and donated all 35,000 to St. Jude's Children's Hospital.
That's impressive.
She was a cancer survivor.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And she said, they saved my life. I want to save somebody else's. And I think that to your point, when you have that kind of humbleness, that kind of ability to be smart enough to recognize that, and then the ability to work hard. I mean, that pig didn't feed itself.
Right.
I tell people all the time when people ask me about what separates our ag kids from everybody else, I said it's real easy. The reason why I like your dad, by the way, because in the world of agriculture, if we don't do our job, something dies.
Yeah.
So when you can teach a kid early on that we got to get up, whether we want to or not, we got to feed it, we got to water. And I know it's a pain. My daughter, she's tiny, and she was a senior cheerleader at a big 5A school. Guess what? She had to get up and go feed heifers. She had to water them in cold and in heat. But, now that she's a nurse today, she's so good at her job because my son too, they're so good at their jobs because I think there's things that they learned, that things depended on them, that they were able to carry on into other aspects of their lives. And I remember when I read American Sniper, and I read about your dad's growing up in the FFA and talked about wanting to be an ag teacher initially when he started to go to college. It's the craziest thing. I think I shared this with you, but I'll share one more time since we're on the air. But I had been trying to find a way to get to talk to your dad. And of course, with the explosion of American Sniper, it just got harder and harder to find ways to get there. If I'd have been smart, I would have started with the most obvious. I'm fixing to tell you what that was, but I didn't. About the time I finally found a way, then the tragedy that happened. And I was at a loss because I was so eager to want to share that story. And then luckily I found my way to your mom, and then we got to reconnect. And I told Tay, I said, you've got to come to convention. I want you to see what Chris's life was really all about. All that, Colton, all that came together. This is where the story gets really crazy. You ready for this? All that comes together. I was asked to go to Levelland, Texas and speak at a banquet in Levelland, Texas, out in West Texas. I show up at Levelland, and this ag teacher that I have not seen in years gets out of his truck. He starts walking over in my direction. I've not seen this guy in years. You know what he said? He said, Aaron, I saw where you were doing that tribute to Chris. I saw where you had been talking to Taya. He said, Aaron, I was Chris's ag teacher.
That's pretty cool.
Now, what are the odds, Colton, that all of that came into alignment? Everything that I just shared with you within probably 3 months.
Slim.
So that's why I say anytime we think, I like to think I'm a pretty good strategic thinker. Anytime I think I am, I remember the guy upstairs because he's a lot better than I am.
Oh, yeah.
He's really crafty at what he does. But there's just a lot of really good stuff that you just shared there. And you know, another thing that you shared, and I'm going to kind of turn this back into American Sniper a little bit here. You know, one of the things that we like to tell people is when the opportunity arises, I need my sharpest tools.
Yeah.
Okay. When and if I ever need it, I need my best tools. They have to be ready to go. And so I'll ask you a fun question. Do you happen to know how many high schools are in the state of Texas?
Oh man, I can only imagine. I'll take a random guess and say like 6,000.
That's not, hey, listen, you did good. It's just over three.
Okay.
That's still a lot of high schools, though. Most
Yeah.
people are way
Yeah.
low. Most people are way low, Colton. You did good. Um, 3,000 high schools. So, of those high schools, how many of them are going to have a graduating class this year?
Well, all of them.
Every one of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, everybody's going to be out. They're going to be looking for a job, a scholarship, or an opportunity. So, the question that I ask young people is what's your competitive edge? What separates you from your competitor? Sometimes it could be littlest things, a firm handshake, a yes or no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Those can be little things that give you a competitive edge.
Yeah.
But I do believe that young people have to have something that sets them apart from their peers.
Of course.
So at your age, starting your kind of professional career with a lot of incredible experiences under your belt, what would you share as some examples of competitive edges that you think young people could employ to give themselves an edge in life?
I have to think about that and I will get to that. I have kind of overarching, um, I have a Bible verse here.
Sure.
Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for men. That's Colossians 3:23. That's in the NIV version. Um, and I had a Bible study last night and we were even talking about this very similarly, what I'm going to get to, but I can't remember who said it. It was a Christian in the 1600s that was significant for being a public figure. But he said along the lines of a good Christian cobbler is not a good Christian cobbler because he puts little crosses on his shoes, but because he makes the best shoes. And so I think that's what the verse is speaking to. And that's often what I think about when I'm doing business or coming up with ideas is that, well, I need a way to show my faith. And I want to honor God and all that he's done in my life and show him like, look, I'm not forgetting about you. I don't want to take part in something pagan that's godless. But I want to live my faith. And if it's something I'm dedicating so much of my life and time to, it's my business, I need a way to incorporate God. And so what's given me a lot of peace is that my values and how I operate and how I do business are going to be based on my faith. So that's first and foremost. Many people should be able to know that you're a Christian without knowing that you go to church, without you saying that you're a Christian or anything like that. But just because of the way that you're so loving and the way that you treat people, the way you act in good faith and you keep good on your word, I think those are all incredibly important. And those are ways that's honoring God in the way that you do business. You know, if you're breaking laws and you're cheating people, but you're putting Bible verses on your clothing, you're not honoring God at all. In fact, you're making a mockery of him. Um, so I think it's important to show your passion and dive into your passion. You know, God's given you a passion,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it may be, and he's put that there. You don't have a longing and a yearning to go into agriculture, to be a skateboarder, to go into business, um, to be the best chief financial officer of a firm you could possibly be, unless God has placed that passion in
Mm-hmm.
you. And
Wow.
so we can't get by if we're all preachers and missionaries. The world wouldn't survive. We wouldn't be able to advance. So for some people, that's their calling, is to be a missionary. For some people, to be a preacher and a pastor. For a lot of us, our calling is to dive into the mission field that God has given us, because anywhere we go is going to be a mission field. They're
Sure.
going to be people who need to encounter you and through you, Jesus, no matter where they are. And so that's an opportunity for you to show your faith. And then you need to do good work as if you're doing it for God, because you are. He's giving you the opportunity for that. He's giving you the passion for that. And we can't explain how all these things work out in one way or another, and things just fall into our lap, and we're in the right place at the right time for things to happen. And like you said, that's all because of the number one strategical mind out there, which is God. So just living out your Christian faith and your walk in your daily life and the values that you operate in, I think is the best way to honor God. And through that, you'll have a competitive edge. You'll be the best at whatever it is that you choose to do, because that's what God has for you. And then I believe that you'll have God's blessing in His favor. And if you run into roadblocks, it could be an opportunity for you to persist. It could be an opportunity for you to change where you're at and what you're doing. That's very individual and based on your relationship with God and how He's talking to you. But um, I'm trying to think of specific examples. I know when I speak to people and people think highly of me, it's because of three things. One of them I know I'm blessed with, and that's just God given. And then the others I believe that anybody could do and work towards. Um, I'll start with how I believe God has blessed me is immense focus. And so if I'm working on something or I'm speaking to someone, they have my focus, they have my attention, and I'm retaining the information in front of me. That's number one. Now, number two, and I believe a lot of people can do that, and you can improve on that. I just know that I'm blessed with that ability. Number two, like you said, a firm handshake goes a long way. If I shake anybody's hand, it doesn't matter how old or young or what gender, their handshake will tell me a lot about them. Eye contact when I'm speaking to somebody. I know when I'm writing, if I'm texting somebody, if I'm completing an email, if someone has poor punctuation or poor grammar, that really bugs me. A lot of people in my generation don't care for punctuation and grammar and spelling, but it really bugs me. And it tells me that someone either does or doesn't care enough to put that effort into that area of their life. And while they may not value it as much as I do, I still know that I believe that there's a proper way to do some of these things. And, you know, casual situations differ from formal situations, of course. But I believe that's part of the living out your walk and doing the right thing. So I said the handshake, I said looking someone in the eyes. Um, and then I believe if you can relate, a lot of these are going to be personal. I think personal interactions are much more important, and you can bond with somebody that way. But if you can relate to someone, if you can, even if you're being interviewed or you're submitting a resume or whatever it is, if there's an opportunity for you to take a peek into the other person's life and ask them a question or two, just personally, that makes a big difference. At the end of the day, everybody just wants to be seen. We have I forget who says this, but my mom's told me, but we're all wearing an invisible sign on us that says, "See me, please." We all want to be seen and known and recognized, and as an individual. So you're wearing a sign that says, "I am Aaron Alejandro. I want to be known. I want to be seen." And you may not be expressing that all the time, but when somebody answers that call, when somebody does that, you feel so refreshed and relieved, and feel like you can really bond with someone. It makes a big difference. Um, so being able to personally connect with people, I think oftentimes when I've thought of the business or corporate or some world where it seems highly competitive, I've thought of it as losing its humanity a little bit, that is just entirely performative, and that everything you do is based on your performance and how you do the best. Which, like I said, your performance is important, and that will come based on what God has given you. But being able to personally relate with people will get you so much farther than you could expect. When you run into people that seem just so incompetent at what they do, and you're like, how did you get here? It's probably their personal skills and work, right? And so if they're lacking in one area, they've made up for it with their strengths and their ability to speak to people. And anybody can get better at that. Anybody can personally invest and care about someone else's life, or at least a little bit of it that you know. Um, and so I think that doesn't necessarily work for college applications or resumes, but anything person to person makes a huge difference.
If I haven't told you lately, I really like you, by the way. So
Thank you.
uh, I'm going to confess something here because my staff in particular is going to get a kick out of what I'm about to say. interns, everybody that works for me, when they get their intern manual and their intern checklist, across the top, it's got 3 words. It says details, details, details. Because I'm a real details person. I'm always like, take care of the details. And to confess and to show you my humbleness and my vulnerability here, Colton, I want everybody to know that I messed up an email to Colton when we were setting up this podcast. And I'm sitting here laughing now because he's talking about this, and I'm sitting there going, yeah, I'm the one that messed it up. I
Well,
said,
we all do. We all do.
I have this thing set up to populate the time, the date, and everything for the podcast. And I was scheduling a bunch at the same time. And by gosh, it scheduled the wrong one. And Colton caught it and he said, now, what time am I supposed to be? I'm like, Alejandro, you big dummy. You didn't even do your own details, details, details. So, real quick, I wanted to ask you that was gold, by the way. I just wrote down several notes of what you said. Focus, details, see me, please. That's one of the things Coach Nate Hearn talked about today when he and I were visiting. Is he said people need to hear when they're doing a good job, because
Yes.
when they hear that they're doing a good job, that what you're doing is you're validating that gift that God gave them. You're validating that competitive edge that God gave them. I got to share this one with you because your mom shared it, and I just love this to death. You know anybody named Kent Studebaker?
Yes, I do.
I love this quote. The Bible is not a rule book, but rather a recipe for happiness.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good quote, by the way.
Yeah. That's my grandfather.
Yep,
So
I know
uh,
that. I
you
just
didn't
thought I'd
understand that.
share that with you because I think that was such a great quote.
Yeah, I think it's a recipe for true joy.
Yeah.
Because and I believe that's what he meant, but happiness can be fleeting and it's good to revel and enjoy happiness and the simple pleasures, but true joy is found in purpose and uh, you cannot find a lasting purpose unless you are faithful and you have a relationship with Jesus. So I 100% agree. I think the deeper you dive into the Bible, the less it seems like a rule book and things to
Right.
follow. But saying, look, these are not things for you to do to get into heaven, but this is how you can bring heaven to earth. This is how you can
Mm.
have kingdom in your life and have joy. And so when these things go wrong, this is not me punishing you. This is you reaping the consequences of your own poor actions. And when you do these things right, you'll see you'll see the blessing that comes with it, because it's not God striking you down saying, "Oh, you messed up. Okay, here's your punishment." It's God saying, "Look, I've given you everything you need, and you do these things right, and you'll see the way it works out." And most of the time, that's just going to be it's going to be in your head. It's going to be in your heart. The biggest stresses and the biggest joys that we have very little to do with our physical surroundings, but really our relationship
Right.
with the Lord, and our relationship with ourselves. We can really be at peace with ourselves and we know who we are and what God thinks of us. And I've found great peace and solace in that in just the last year, really understanding just how much God loves and cares for us, and that it's not so linear that it's if A, then B, if C, then D, but rather, I love you unconditionally, no matter what, for who you are. And then because you know that, and because you know you've been forgiven, then I choose to walk in a way that glorifies God and is saying, look, I'm just so glad that you've given me the opportunity to do this, that I've messed up time and time again, and I still have the opportunity to do good and to honor and glorify you. I want to do that rather than a fearful saying, I'm going to do these things because if I don't, then I'll go to hell.
Right.
Uh, it's definitely relationship driven. Like I said, the man who's been forgiven the most is the most grateful and will do the most in return. Um, and that's, I believe, how we're supposed to live our lives and act and see ourselves as humans. Paul renames us, instead of sinners, we're now saints, knowing full well we are sinners, but we don't carry that title.
Right.
We carry the title of saint because that's who God says we are.
Well, I just
So
think it's another example of the difference between negativity and positivity. What's going to attract more people?
yeah,
It's
well, they're
not going
both
to,
infectious.
yeah, exactly. But the positive one is the one that attracts more people.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
have you read, by the way, just sitting here listening, and have you read John Gordon's One Truth?
I've not. I've read very few faith-based books, and I'm kind of starting my journey. I've started with Dr. Frank Turek. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. It's an apologetics book.
Uh-huh.
He's an apologist. And then I'm reading C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity.
Good
And then
book.
yeah, I love it. I love C.S. Lewis. He's
Yep.
amazing. I love, I'm going to continue reading through his classics and then move from there. I have not, so I'm really fascinated with C.S. Lewis and now N.T. Wright just recently, Tom Wright,
Uh-huh.
and Dr. Frank Turek. He's on YouTube, so that's how I found him. And so he kind of relates to my generation in that way by being in social media more actively. But those are the guys that I've read. And then I'll be honest, my mom has read a lot, and I have read very little outside of that.
So I want to, of course, I was late to the John Gordon bus. We had him. He was the keynote speaker at our convention this last year, and he and I were talking, and I had to apologize to him. So John, if you're watching this, I'm apologizing again. Uh, he's written, I think, 17 number one bestsellers, um,
Wow.
but his latest book, he and I were talking about it, and I think you would really enjoy it. It's called One Truth, and what he's talking about is how when we get away from the truth, that's when we typically start to have problems.
Hmm.
We lose our discernment, and if we could just stay centered into what we know is true, then everything kind of takes care of itself. And anyway, I just thought of you when you said that, so I wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, if we act on the truth, we'll see the way the world's supposed to be around us, and we'll also recognize what's not right. When you bring light to a situation, you
Right.
show those imperfections. You can see the things that are wrong, but you also see the things that are right, and it helps you address that. So it may be scary to bring light into a situation
Hey,
and the imperfections, but
I,
it's necessary.
we have that discussion sometime with the young people. I always tell them the truth is confrontational,
Yeah,
but it doesn't have to be mean.
right.
You know
Loving.
what you know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to be mean, but it still can be the truth. Um, okay, the other thing that I want to compliment you on, one of my big deals, everybody that knows me on social media knows me by my handle is Live Your Brand, because I'm a big believer in living your brand. I'm a big believer in what you share, what you post, what you comment on, all the things that we do, all the touch points that we have. They become your brand, by the way.
Right.
And so when I was doing my search on you, that's one of the things I wanted to compliment you on is it's very clear that you're living your brand.
Thank you. I
And
appreciate it.
I think that's a good thing because consistency creates credibility. So the more consistent we are, the more credibility that we create for our brands. So when we live our brand, obviously, and consistency creates credibility, then if I talk to you, um, I, I'm apt to trust what you say more
Right.
because you've been consistent.
Of
So I
course.
just wanted to compliment you on living your brand. So
Thank you. I appreciate
um,
it.
we might have to come back and do a part two because I think there's several other things you and I could just take off and talk about. But we do need to wrap up today. But before we wrap up, every guest gets a fun question.
Okay.
So here's your fun question, Colton Kyle. What's the best concert you've ever been to?
Okay. That is a good question. Unfortunately, I've not been to many. I think I can remember two. I may have been to three. I went to a Mercy Me concert. It was my first concert, and I was probably 10, so I don't remember it all that well.
Uh-huh.
And then I went to a really small concert. I mean, there were maybe 50 of us in the crowd. And my friends found this band that they really liked. They were a lot smaller. It's called Harbor, as the English spelling. So Harbour. They're just kind of like indie pop punk kind
Mm.
of. Um, and so like that, I got a shirt for merch, and I found all the band members and got them to sign it because there were not very many of us, right? So that was probably the best concert that I've been to, and my girlfriend loves concerts, so she's been to like Niall Horan. Uh, she would love to go to a Cody Jinks. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
I'm forgetting now, but Morgan Wallen. So she's been to some really fun ones, and I love music. I listen to it all the time, but concerts are a little overwhelming for me, so I just listen at my house.
It's okay. That's good stuff.
I'm
I've,
curious about yours.
Oh, don't get me started. I'm a big live music person.
Okay.
I'm a diehard Jimmy Buffett fan.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm a diehard Bruce Springsteen. Don't agree with either of their politics. Just it's their music, their talent that I like.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just love live music. And but if you were to get a hold of my playlist, you would say, wow, he's got everything from Christian to Tejano to a big band sound like Sinatra, all the way to country music, classic rock. I've got the whole spectrum, and
Yeah.
Mercy Me's in there, obviously. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, thank you for asking, though.
Yeah.
Colton, listen, I just want to tell you again how much I appreciate you sharing some of your time with us today. Um, I know I'm not the only one to say this, but really proud of you. And I hope you keep up the good work and you keep being a positive influence on the folks around you and share your wisdom so that people can be discerning and keep sharing seeds of greatness where people can grow into oak trees of success.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I'm honored to have the opportunity to speak to you. I've really enjoyed our conversation. And
We're going to keep going. We're going to keep talking.
yeah,
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking time out of your schedule again to join us today. We appreciate you sharing some of your time with us. Remember, if agriculture's taught us anything, it's taught us if you want to know what the future is, grow it. It requires a little work. You got to plant the right things, and then you got to harvest it and feed others, feed yourself and feed others. And just doing that just makes our world a better place. And we appreciate you coming by today and joining Colton. And, again, have 10 friends older than you, 10 friends younger than you. Ladies and gentlemen, you just got to see a little bit about where we're headed. So, Colton, thank you so much for sharing. Everybody else, thank you for joining us. And we will see you down the road. Until we meet again, go out and do something great for somebody. You'll feel good about it. And guess what? Everybody's going to benefit from it. Thank you so much.